Thank you. I'd just like to, if you could help me, I'm trying to make sense of your conclusions. Are you saying that one of the ethical dilemmas that's been surfaced is the dilemma between using IT for production and profit as against it? I mean, is it an ethical choice?
No, I'm not saying that in that respect, if you will. What I'm saying only here is that the e-transformation, I would say, phenomena, it's creating new questions that we should answer.
So, I mean, could you give me an example of an ethical dilemma that it's surfaced?
The ethical dilemma which I see is that in the past, you have the time and ability to understand what you're dealing with. And I don't see that valid anymore. You have to deal with a new speed, which is totally different of what you used to do in the past.
So what's the dilemma there?
Dilemma is, do I have to think what is good or bad, or do I have to have principles who are defining what is good or bad within this new context?
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay.
I thought maybe I'd just supply a piece of information to the question you're asking. If you look in this week's Economist, you'll find a rather detailed article on the internet, intellectual property, and the United States Department of Justice having embarked on a rather ill-considered course of now suing consumers for the illegal consumption of MPEG files. Their example was an 11-year-old black girl in New Jersey being subpoenaed by the U.S. Department of Justice because she was listening to illegal copies of music on her computer. Paul David has a very good series of articles on the tragedy of the public knowledge commons, which says that because of a pre-computerized legal infrastructure for the control of intellectual property, what is happening with the internet and universal connectivity is going to end up vesting in the long run control possibly of all information, all of this collegial scientific research that we do together in a room now, in the companies that control the internet. And you'll see very prominent patent lawyers like Robert Kunstad writing editorials about how it's time to abolish intellectual property laws, something we couldn't have dreamed of 10 years ago. Excuse me? I would say it's the person suing her, and that's what the Economist said. And I've been asked to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Phil Fellman from Southern New Hampshire University.
Thank you.
Further contributions?
My name is Roland Coopers from Shell. I recognize this, and thank you for the additional explanation. I think we should also remind ourselves that there are, out of all of this, emergent phenomena that are really fantastic in terms of innovation that people react in awkward ways to. I think your example is a very good one, because this whole file swapping phenomenon is a classic example of an emergent, unforeseen phenomenon that people are reacting to by clamping down instead of by building upon. In a more playful way, I think the Flashmob Phenomenon is another one that's really interesting. And that's playful at this time, but so there are also, in a sense, a flash mob you could see is a sense is sort of an emergent ethical phenomenon, because people build a sense of short-term community which they value. And so there are all sorts of interesting developments popping out of all of this, and it's just a plea for looking at those and making sure that we value and build upon them, because the dark side's one thing, but there are also great things that are happening, and sniffing them out is actually the reflex that seems to be around.
Yes. May I add something to your comment that the whole, I would say, media industry is now being challenged by this kind of a phenomenon. you take a look to the very interesting example. There is an Apple company page in the internet. The first day that they post the page, which is a page that you use to download music or videos to a computer, there were exactly 130 million people doing that kind of work, of a download. The question is that the media industry has been thinking in the distribution of CDs and DVDs. And there is now a movement in the other side called the collaboration or potential collaboration with the market, which is reacting totally differently than you would thought probably a year ago. That is what I call the e-transformation. And this is what I called what is good or bad. You take a look to that particular issue, and in the US and in other countries, you will find out, even in my country, who is the one which is that you have to some way or the other, prosecute. The one which is providing the tool to transfer the files, or the one which is using the files. This is an ethical dilemma. I would say both, from different perspectives. But now there is other people who say, look, if we can sell 150 million copies in one day, we are going to be able to produce a totally different business model. That's why they are now, I don't know if you have used this kind of tools, but there are 3 or 4 pages that are distributing today CDs at 79 cents dollars per copy. And they're making a ton of money. The question here is, again, there are so many other possibilities and new things that are coming up with this utilization of new technology that it's some way or the other challenging the typical things that you used to thought in many areas. That is what I apply in this ethical dilemma.
Eve and the gentleman at the back.
Thank you. Eve Middleton-Kelly from the London School of Economics. I would like to focus on both the complexity and the ethical issues. On the complexity side, I think what you showed us is quite a powerful and significant co-evolutionary process. It is the technology influencing the business and the communication and the collaboration areas, and then being influenced in turn by these processes. So I think we need to consider that co-evolutionary process from a complexity perspective. On the ethical side, and again looking at it with the complexity spectacles, you brought up the huge questions of what is happening. And this is a global, in one sense, responsibility. We cannot expect governments to take this on board. And what I would invite the conference to also consider is, where does the individual responsibility lie? Because we must consider it in terms of distributed individual responsibility, not one that we can simply give over to governments, because this is a global phenomenon.
I completely agree, Eve, on your points of view. I would say that the governments here are a certain kind of promoters and leaders or in the changing process. Nothing else. But on the other hand, there is a challenge to the so-called business models. There is a challenge to the so-called learning models. Let me take as an example the educational industry. Educational industry is the most protected industry in the world. The only ones who can provide a diploma here in the UK are the institutions who happens to be here. What is going to happen when an institution in other countries is going to be able to produce a certain kind of a diploma, certificate, or professional capability kind of a paper? It's going to be a change. Is that going to be a challenge to the institution per se? I would say no. There is going to be a challenge to the value that the different institutions will have to pursue. because now you are going to be able to compete in the whole world. So what I'm trying to say here is that yes, I agree that the governments are not the ones who are going to make the change, if you will, but the individuals, us. I think we have to, this is an incredible opportunity, what we are living these days. But it's changing every single thing that we do. And it's changing the way we see the things, which in the ethical side, if you will, is challenging what I call the traditional way of thinking and traditional way of development principles who are based on the things that we have done in our lives in all the areas that we work with. So the question that I would like to pose again to you is, do we need a new ethics? My answer would be yes. Not meaning that we have to change the values, but we have to change the application of those values within the new context, which is a pretty difficult thing to do. And to finalize the whole thing, you will find out that now the value, the intrinsic value that you have in a human being and an institution or in an organization is related to knowledge. It's not related anymore to any physical things, which is again posing additional opportunities in this area.
Okay, we have one more question before we move to the parallel sessions. Thank you.
Hi, I'll make this quite quick. Lionel Sachs from University College London. I was going to make actually, it's more a remark relating to this ethical issue, your points about the penetration of communication technology and so on. In the UK, if you do a quick comparison, because we like buying and selling supermarket chains, right? So we know how much they're worth. The market capitalization of our supermarket chains are more or less within a couple of billion, the same as third-generation mobile infrastructure and licenses. To support an industry of that size, clearly you expect the individuals to be spending the same amount of money. Supermarkets, that's 20 quid a week on average or median. Mm-hmm. That means we're looking for an increase of a factor of 4 more or less that people are prepared to spend on their communication technologies and spend the same amount on this stuff as individuals as they're currently spending on food. And I thought that sort of interestingly relates some of these issues with the earlier talk, the basic needs categories, where we know we've got to eat. And now we're expecting people to spend as much money on ICT as individuals, forget about corporations, as we do on food. I think that's an interesting ethical issue.
Yeah, indeed. Good.
Okay, we may have time for one more question. Raúl?
Raúl Espejo, Cinco Limited. I just didn't want to let it pass, that this role of government in regulating society or supporting society in its development. I think that we should recognize that there is a commercial ethics that is the one that is dominating industry and all the commercial activities. And also we have a sort of public ethics, which is concerned with individuals and their interests and all the concerns of society. And the two things have to be hand in hand, and we cannot get one running away at the expense of the other. And in that sense, I would suggest that government has a very important role in being a guardian of these developments that you have explored at this time.
Let me react to that. I would say that the government will have to be the guardian. Yes, I agree with that. But on the other hand, the governments will have to be the ones who are leading the change, and the ones who are promoting the change, the ones who are, some way or the other, enabling the society to use this big opportunity. And in my opinion, most of the governments are not thinking in that way yet. That's my whole point. Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.